Blandford Nature Center Moments series. I'm Sarah and I'm the Wildlife Education Specialist here at Blandford, and today you are all going to be meeting Baby to learn a little bit more about barred owls. Now you have to pardon Baby, she's looking behind herself because she recognizes that I set out her enrichment ladder, so we'll get to that a little bit later. But today I'm really excited to be sharing Baby with you and a little bit about her story and some species facts about the barred owls that are native to Michigan. And I know you guys are all going to have a lot of really good questions for me, but I'm going to go ahead and ask that you all hold on to those questions until the very end when I can do kind of a Q&A session with you all. But feel free to say hi to us while I'm talking during this video. Let us know where you're watching from so we can see how far these videos are reaching in our West Michigan and further community. But without further ado, as I mentioned, this is Baby, our female barred owl. So here at Blandford Nature Center, we do have two barred owls. We have our female and our male. And Baby gets her name Baby not because she is a baby, but because she came to us as a baby. So in the spring of 2011 was her birthday, and she was actually rejected from her nest because she was born or developed juvenile cataracts. And typically if they're not born with them but develop them, that can come from head trauma. And so she was found on the ground, clearly rejected from her nest, and the person who found her called us and said, hey, I've actually noticed that this barred owl is on the ground and has been for a couple of days. What would you like me to do? And so Blandford gave this gentleman a lot of tips for how to monitor her to keep her safe from people and dogs and cats, but also leave her in a place where mom can come back to her, because believe it or not, even birds will come back for their babies. So I know a lot of us think when we find a baby animal alone that it's abandoned or rejected. And sometimes in Baby's case that is the case, but that's not always the case. So you want to make sure that you call your local wildlife rehabber to confirm that this is a situation that the rehabber thinks the animal is rejected or in danger or needs additional help. And so after a few days of the gentleman being like, yeah, no, this owl's not going anywhere, Blandford gave him proper instructions for getting her collected and to bring her in. And our veterinarian recognized that she had the juvenile cataracts on her eyes. And so with medication and lots of time and rehabilitation or physical therapy really to teach her how to use her body and how to be an owl, eventually those cataracts were cleared and she did start to develop those behaviors that she needs, like eating her own food and communicating with the other barred owls. But now her vision isn't perfect. So even though it is cleared and she can see, she can't see well. And so it would be a lot like those of us humans who need to wear glasses. And of course we can't give owls glasses. Baby most certainly would not be happy with something like that sitting on her face. So because we know that she doesn't have the perfect vision, even perfectly healthy birds of prey in the wild don't always get their food on their first few tries. It can take up to 10 attempts for them to actually capture their prey, and so to have poor vision is really going to reduce her chances of not only locating and capturing her prey, but also locating and avoiding predators. But most importantly, as an imprint, Baby does not have the knowledge and the skill set and the natural fear of humans that she needs to survive in the wild. And so even though she's not afraid of us, it doesn't mean she wants me to tickle her or hug her or kiss her. In fact, you can see it means that she's not afraid to bite me. And so that wouldn't be safe for her in the wild, because although I'm an animal lover, and I'm assuming most of you watching today are animal lovers, and you would think it'd be super cool to have an owl like this approach you in the wild, there are a lot of people who wouldn't think that was so awesome, and so that would put her in danger of being harmed or killed, and not only by the people, but of course our dogs, whose job is to protect us. This type of owl approaching that dog's human is not going to fly very well with the dog. And so having her at Blandford Nature Center is an awesome experience for us to use her as an education ambassador, but it's our way of providing her kind of at that second chance of life because of her imprint behaviors and her not completely perfect vision. But she's a barred owl with a D, not with an N. Hang on tight, guys, because you'll be meeting our barn owl. But barred owls get their name from those stripes on their feathers. So any bird that has stripes on their feathers, whether it's a blue jay or a kestrel, we call those bars. That's barring. And so you can see that those stripes on her feathers go along her chest. If I can turn her around without making her mad, because she's paying attention to the rabbit now. You can see on her back, she's also got those bars up and down. You can see the bunny behind us. The bars up and down her body. And so that helps a lot with camouflage. If you think about more specifically in the winter when the branches are covered in snow and ice, it does create that dark light striping. But if you imagine the sun shining through the branches, the sun is going to create that sunshine on the trunk of the tree is going to create stripes because those branches are interrupting the patterning in there. And so that would look a lot like sun shining on the trunk of the tree, or like the different patterns on bark and how they have their flaking and their layering and all that. So that would be helpful with camouflage. And barred owls are pretty lucky in the winter time because most of their favorite foods are awake all winter. Rabbits, eastern cottontails don't go to sleep. Meadow voles aren't sleeping. And so these guys have plenty access to food in the winter. And if we look at baiting, which is her way of saying, oh my gosh, don't stare. Oh, I forgot to introduce you guys to Blandford's bat. So referring to those imprint behaviors, when baby does this, it is very similar to a child or adult going, I don't want to be here to teach people about owls, Miss Sarah. So why do you have to make me do this? I'm throwing a fit. I'm going to make this so hard for you. Right? So hard. Yeah. Because that's my job, is to make Miss Sarah's job harder. Anyway, if you were to look at their feet, you would notice that they are covered in feathers all the way down their ankles, down to their toes. And that's kind of like their natural little boots that they were born with, so that the winter doesn't bother them so much, standing on frozen perches and cold branches. And of course, if you've seen those videos of foxes who will listen to the subnivean level, that secret little world underneath the snow, owls will do something similar where they'll listen, and then all of a sudden you'll see this owl dive down, throw its talons forward, and sink their feet into the snow and pull something out. And so that would help the barred owls out pretty effectively in the winter. But for baby, once again, you'll notice that her behaviors are a little bit different than everyone else because all of our birds of prey here at Blandford that are not imprints do have those not only wild instincts, but wild behaviors that they displayed in the wild. Whereas she has pretty much only lived with Bart and humans. And so what's interesting is she does still have some kind of internal instincts, like knowing her song. So that who cooks for you all, that's the barred owl. And if you hear that in your yard, you've got some barred owls there. But so she'll sometimes who cooks for you with Bart, and sometimes he'll do it back. But caterwauling is what barred owls very specifically do to one another, whether they are confirming that you have agreed to be my mate, or maybe they're proclaiming that they've found a fantastic meal for themselves and their mate, who the male would typically go out hunting while the female is incubating the eggs in the barred owl world. And so sometimes you'll catch baby and Bart caterwauling together. And caterwauling is that kind of, this is where some early pioneer monkey stories came from, was they kind of do this, and so sometimes Bart and baby will go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just like what you'd hear in the forest, where you might hear one barred owl in one tree, and then a little ways away, this one's responding, and then back and forth, and back and forth. But sometimes Bart will forget the lyrics, because our friend Bart was hit by a car, and so he acquired a little bit of brain damage to the right side of his brain. And baby is his pal. Baby is not his mate. They're buddies. And so baby, even if Bart sings the wrong song, she totally pretends like he did an awesome job. And she will go on over to him, maybe rub her beak up against his, cleaning his toes a little bit, pulling on his feathers, just to be like, yeah, good job, buddy. But you'll see right now that she's biting on my glove. Once again, if I had another one of our birds of prey here on hand, they wouldn't be behaving that way, because it's not beneficial for you to expose your face to your predator. These other guys who are not imprints see me as a predator, and exposing their beak, their eyes, their brain, and their spine to me by biting me is not going to be efficient. Instead, wild birds of prey are more likely to protect themselves with their talons, but chances are you're not going to get introduced to their talons without other warnings coming before that. So the most common sound you'll ever hear from an owl specifically is that clacking of their beak, that clack, 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 clack. And that's their way of saying, hey, I notice you, I see you, and I think you're getting a little too close to me. And if you continue to approach, or, yes, we're watching Doctor Who. Yep. Oh, wow. Yep. You continue to approach their space, Maybe they're trying to protect their mate. Maybe they're trying to protect a meal that they worked really hard on subduing. Maybe they're trying to protect their young. They're going to give you body language. They might shift their feathers a little bit. They might sway back and forth from side to side. They might swing their head back and forth. There are going to be all kinds of other signs that they give to you before you are introduced to their talons. But if you are introduced to their talons, my friend, that means you just weren't listening to the warnings. And for baby, she doesn't give me your typical warnings of, I'm going to clack my beak, and then I'm going to shake my feathers at you, and then I'm going to sway my head at you. She just goes right for biting because she has no idea that as a predator, that gives me perfect access to some pretty vulnerable parts of her body. But I'm going to come a little bit closer so you guys can see her. If she baits, that's okay. Once again, that's just because she knows how she can get away with stuff. And so baby, as I mentioned, came to us in 2011, which would mean that this spring is her 9th birthday. So that's a really, an awesome story for us. But if you think about how much feathering is going on around here, she looks like a beach ball covered in feathers, right? But these guys are barely 2 pounds, just under 2 pounds. In fact, because she's an imprint, I'm able to do more intimate education with her than I would be able to with any of the other birds. But I could show you that I could stick my finger, oh, she says no thank you, about that far through her feathers before I'm touching any body. And that's because they're just covered in fluff, and that's what helps keep them warm. But it's also a good way of tricking you into thinking that they're super big. Now, when we think about these guys in their eye color, barred owls and barn owls have that dark brown iris, whereas our screeches, long-eared, great-horned, they've all got that kind of yellowish, greenish, golden eye color to their iris. And so scientists are trying to figure out how did that change, considering the fact that barn owls are the oldest living species of owl. So if that was something that they had already adapted and benefited from, baby's watching the rabbit, benefited from, then why would that change in just one other species as far as Michigan goes? And so a couple theories that have come up are perhaps it helps collect light because of course we know that dark colors absorb light, and so maybe in the dark it helps them to collect more light into their eyes. But maybe it also helps with their camouflage. So if you think about the screech owl, if the screech owl is holding its body really tight and sucking its feathers in and staring at you, the rest of the body looks just like bark on a tree. But those eyes tell you that something is there. Because if you have eyes, that means you look for things to eat or you watch out for things that are going to eat you. So that means you're living. You're a living creature. And so screech owls, they might do this, where they kind of peer their eyelashes together so that they can see through, but you can't really see their eyes. But these guys, with those dark brown eyes, they can hold their eyes wide open while they're watching over the forest, and it looks a lot to us like little knots in the tree or little woodpecker holes. So those are a couple theories as to why they have the darker colored iris. We're feeling pretty entertained right now. Everybody's moving around. I honestly think that the animals think it's really strange that I'm talking to the window, similar to when I did a practice video. They were like, there's no one there, Miss Sarah. I'm not sure who you're talking to, right? But for barred owls, what's interesting is they will actually utilize old hawk nests, old squirrel nests, crow nests, or even large hollows in the trees. And so here at Blandford Nature Center, we know of a few areas on the property where we've seen barred owl families hanging out and could potentially be nesting there. And like I said, right about now is the nesting period for barred owls. And so just probably about not a full month ago is when we started hearing the last of the who cooks for you alls, or the who-ahs. And sometimes it's interesting to think about what that feels like for our guys inside listening to everyone outside. But the reason why Baby and Bart don't mate with one another is because, well, first, Bart perhaps has lost that instinctual memory of, yes, my job is to procreate and to create more barred owls, but also they're not exposed to the elements, so their instincts for reproduction aren't cued as quickly as our friends in the wild who see the change in daylight, feel the change in temperature, absolutely feel the change in barometric pressure. And so these guys don't really kick into that mood as you would imagine those in the wild who, about a month ago, the males were making sure that they had all their females signed up for themselves. But what's interesting is these guys, once they've raised their young, they will allow their young to live with their family group for anywhere from 6 months to about a year. And then after that, mom and dad are like, okay, you've had plenty of practice, it's time for you to go. And so it's not uncommon when you're in the wild to see barred owls in larger groups of anywhere from 2 to 4. Not necessarily a roosting behavior similar to how long-eared owls will roost together in large roost groups, but kind of like a I got your back, you got my back kind of deal. It's a really good, helpful way of indicating when food is found, when predators are located and approaching us, and just really for the young, making sure that they're solidifying those behaviors for hunting and for avoiding predators and for responding to the winter, really, because a lot of owls die during their first or second winter because it's tough. A lot of your food has disappeared. It's cold. The predators that are bigger than you are awfully hungry. For barred owls, their most common predators are the northern goshawks and great horned owls. So if you think in the winter, when the great horned owl is also pretty hungry and it's out hunting in the forest, a barred owl might become that winter day's meal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and perch baby on the ladder behind us, because for enrichment, since she's squeezing my finger like, oh, let's be done. For enrichment, for this girl specifically, I like to perch her in places where she can turtle watch. Because in the wild, scientists have seen these guys hanging on branches over very shallow waters of streams or the edges of lakes, or even literally wading around in the water, because I know you guys have seen those those pictures now online where they say, did you know that owls have chicken legs? All birds have long, skinny legs. You just can't see them because they're covered in fluff until you lift that fluff up. But again, think about that picture. We've seen the owl with long legs, and the owl can kind of walk through the shallows of the waters, and scientists have seen them grab small fish, crayfish, frogs, snakes. And so it's not totally strange to us that she is stimulated by turtles. I won't say she hates them, and I won't say she likes them, because that's anthropomorphizing, putting human feelings into an animal, and that doesn't actually work. They don't actually have those feelings or thoughts. But she is certainly intrigued by them. She's interested in them. And so she'll sit for, as I'm cleaning cages, quite literally an hour to an hour and a half watching the turtles in the turtle tanks. And so I'll bet it just goes right back to that instinct deep inside her to watch things moving in general, but also moving in the water. Because once again, it's not uncommon to catch barred owls, to see barred owls catching things in the shallows of the water. When our Blandings turtle, who has, you guys will have to come out when we can all re-enter society and be near one another again, you'll have to come out and visit Blandford, because our Blandings turtle has her own little half pond, half land enclosure here, and that's right on the other side of the barred owl cage. Well, at one point we put some fish in there for the Blandings turtle to actively hunt and eat, because that's what she'd do in the wild, and baby was fish watching, and people thought that was just hysterical, because she would legitimately be sitting in her cage watching the fish like, ooh, what's happening? Now, of course, when I do that, for owls, she's not going to be turning her eyes. She's going to be turning her head up, down, back, in circles, side to side, because those big eyeballs are stuck in place. Those eyes can't rotate in their skull, which is why owls can turn their head almost all the way around. If you look at this great horned owl skull and look at how big that eye socket is, owls have extra bones in their neck that allow them to turn their heads really far. So for her, you could watch her head to see where she was viewing the fish, because her head is going to move to the location that she wants to look rather than her eyeballs. In fact, their eyeballs are so big that if you and I had eyeballs like an owl, we would have 2 giant grapefruits for eyes in terms of skull to eyeball ratio, and about 70% of their skull is full of eyeball. Our little ping pong balls only take up about 5% of our skull. So they've got pretty massive eyes. But once again, I'm going to go ahead and perch her over here. You'll notice that she is used to jumping off my glove onto the ladder, because she knows what's about to go down. And if at any point while I'm talking she decides she's all done turtle watching, I'm used to reacting to that as well. I know. You ready? She's like, man, what are we going to do? And we fold the wings and we relax, and it's all good. We're going to do some turtle watching. Now, during this time, while she's turtle and at this point opossum watching, I would like to open it up to you guys to ask me some questions. So thank you all for staying tuned, and I'm going to keep my eye on baby as well as your questions. Let's see. This is the weird part where you guys get to stare at my face, right? I love seeing all these comments about how people miss being here. That's so fantastic. We love seeing all the families coming out for hikes just to get outdoors and get some fresh air. Yes, Heather Truffle probably did want some attention too. She feels very ignored. Well, let's see. Since you guys don't have questions right now, I'll introduce you to the craft for the day. So, baby being a barred owl, I was like, man, how can I make this craft look a lot more like an owl? Oh, we got some questions, so we'll talk about our craft in a minute. So because baby came to us in 2011, this spring will be her 9th birthday, so she is 9 years old. And Bart was with us 1 year prior to her, so we can do hypothetical owl math to guesstimate how old he is, but typically with birds of prey, you know how old they are if they came to you as a baby. So yes, keep an eye out for these sweatshirts because this is a part of us raising funds to support our ambassadors. And so this is a shirt that our wildlife manager, Lori Lamaro, is creating for sale. So a lot of the time when you have employees, how do you become qualified to do this job? A lot of the time when you have employees who work with wild animals, there's a set of things you should be doing. First of which, volunteering, showing that you will do something for free, whether that is cleaning up poop, cutting up produce and mice and, changing yucky straw, whatever it is, volunteering. And then, of course, acquiring a college degree is another way of showing that you are dedicated to things, you put your time in, and you're knowledgeable, and you have that background. So in college, our wildlife manager and myself have wildlife biology backgrounds, and I also have an outdoor rec background, which allows me to work with people and to really help connect with people a little bit better. Another thing would be taking trainings, going for things that maybe they're workshops or trainings, certification trainings that cost, but there are a lot of free opportunities out there where people just want to help grow those skills and share that interest and share that knowledge set. But in college, a lot of labs will have you do hands-on trainings and stuff like that. So typically volunteering, going for that, whether it's a college degree or some way of showing that you are knowledgeable and dedicated and you're a hard worker, and then, of course, making sure you're getting plenty of trainings on hand so that you feel good about what you're doing. So if it was sitting on top of squirrel nest, so hi Justin, tell Hanky that if an owl was sitting on top of a squirrel nest, potentially they could have eaten the squirrel and just kind of stayed put. But also scientists have found that barred owls and some other owls will take over left behind squirrel nests. So it could be that the barred owls were like, oh, we're really struggling to find a good hole in the tree. This is good to put our babies because it's time. So there's a good chance that they could have been reusing that squirrel nest as their own nest. So the good thing about barred owls, where to spot them in the wild and in GR, barred owls, eastern screech owls, and great horned owls are the most common in Michigan, and they are ones that you can find in your own backyard, even if you're like me and you live inner city. So I live in an apartment complex, and right next to my apartment complex is this small patch of forest that I'm sure was built, or not built, I'm sure was kept to prevent erosion from the businesses around it. But I hear barred owls calling there, and right on the other side of that little strip of forest, as I guess I can call it, is Leonard Street. Tons of businesses and stores, and we've got a couple of daycares and stuff over there. So you can find them in the city. Barred owls have they have a variety of habitats that they'll either be hunting in, nesting in. But if you think about the fact that they have been found hunting near the water, you can find them in deep forest, you can find them in inner city, you can find them near water habitats, whether it's streams, lakes, rivers. So keeping an eye out for also what evidence do you have of prey availability. So if this is an area that has poor plant quality, that means the next step up in the food chain, those primary consumers, probably not going to be doing so well, which means that these birds of prey, or these, thank you, Truffle, for pulling on my shoelace. Heather, she really does feel like she's being neglected. You can find them in all of those different areas as long as you can see that that habitat is healthy and will provide food and shelter for them. How do they move their heads around so far? So I want everyone on this video to repeat the word almost with me. No animal on this planet can spin their head all the way around or they would snap their spine and die. So owls can turn their head almost all the way around. If 360 is a full circle, owls can go about 270 degrees. And once again, because of those big eyes facing forward, not able to turn them side to side, they have to turn their heads to locate prey, but also watch out for predators. And in our neck, we have 7 vertebrae in just our neck portion of our spine, not this lower spine here. Owls have 14 bones in their neck, and they also have these little pockets of blood in their chin, so that if you and I, if we held our head in one direction for too long, we're cutting off blood vessels that are sending oxygen to our brain, and suddenly we're going to get those like seeing stars, ooh, I'm feeling kind of dizzy feeling. But owls, they can stay in one direction for a long time because those pockets of blood are always sending oxygenated blood to the brain. So they have that ability because they have the extra bones in their neck, and that's what allows them to see the world around themselves. Do they have ears? They do. So for owls, their ears are located along the edge of their facial circle. So hopefully one of the first things you notice when you see an owl versus a hawk versus a falcon versus a chickadee versus a turkey versus a goose is that circular shaped face. And that face works as a funnel to collect sound to allow the vibrations over the feathers to move to the ears. So the ears are located right below the feathers on the facial circle. And those ears are massive because they need to take in as much sound in the night as they can. And so for great horned owls, barn owls, barred owls, they've got ear holes about the size of a quarter. I think if Baby didn't realize turtle watching was a thing today, she may have let me show you her ear, but we're going to go ahead and leave her be for now because she's clearly content. But if you move those feathers, you can see inside the ear, and the ears and eyes both are actually so large that a veterinarian, if careful, can separate the feathers and see the back of the eyeball through the ear. So they can hear. Most owls have asymmetrical ear holes. So for you and I, if we were to stick our finger in one ear hole and work our way across our face, at no point did my finger go up or down. It stayed straight in the middle. And so for them, they've got one that's a little bit higher than the other to locate sounds coming from below them or above them, which is why, because they're allowing their ears to focus on where that sound's coming from, their brain says, okay, time to look upper left, lower right. And that's why you'll see them hold still for so long. And people think our owls are fake or our statues because they're holding still. Whoosh. Whoosh. Because they're allowing their ears to tell their brain where that sound is coming from. But I'm going to go ahead and get into the craft real quick. So like I said, I wanted to try to do a craft that is fun, easy, low resource, maybe helps with some fine motor skills with our friends, whether it's scissors, tearing, glue. But I wanted to try to make one that was a little bit like a barred owl. So, and I also wanted to be cognizant of resources that may or may not be accessible to us right now. So if you do have access to construction paper, I have created my own, what I like to call my long-eared owl. And I was thinking about spring, so I went for pink and green. And you know what? That's the best part about crafts is they don't have to be just like nature. This owl could be whatever color I want. But let's say you don't have construction paper. In your recycling bin, I'll bet you have a little bit of paper going on. This owl was made strictly from recycled goods. So all of this is recycled Yahtzee pages. And I was like, hey, that looks a lot like the bars on a barred owl's body. And so these eyes, the beak, the feet, all came from bits of newspaper and magazine and, you know, all the advertisements that we get in the mail that my father, who's a postman, calls marriage mail. That's where I got all of those other items besides my Yahtzee sheets for my Yahtzee owl. So that is our craft for today. Please feel free to share your examples with us on our Facebook page, whether it's in a comment on this video or sending us a message. If you read in the comment section below this video, you'll be able to find the instructions and supply needs for this craft and where we located it online. But I just want to tell you all thank you for joining us today and for coming to hang out with Baby and I. And if you enjoyed being with us, make sure you like this video and share it with your Facebook friends. And in the description of this video, we've also provided a link to our website. If you're able to, please consider supporting us by making a donation of any size, so that way we can continue to provide care for our wildlife ambassadors and all the awesome opportunities that Blandford will continue to provide for the community. So you can click that link below, or you can visit our website, blandfordnaturecenter.org, and go to our donate button. But thank you all again for hanging out with Baby and I. I'll look forward to reading your comments and your questions after I close this video off, and when I get a little bit of time once I put Baby back. I'm sure she'll be done turtle watching after this. But of course, don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. to hang out with Lori and Lucy to learn more about turkey vultures, which I think is going to be a really cool sign of spring for all of us. So until then, I hope you all stay healthy and that you all get outside.